Hello everyone, we are from Group 1 Tutorial 2. In this video, the subject that we want to discuss is about government policy and international trade with a case study about America and Kenya negotiate a trade deal.
Based on Chapter 7, the government policy and the international trade, the topic of the why the government should consider human rights when granting the profession trading rights to countries involves several arguments. So the first one is for the considering human rights. The ethic responsibility, the governments have a moral duty to promote and protect human rights worldwide. And the global standards, the encouraging human rights as part of the trade policies could help establish the universal norms and standards. And about the long-term stability, the countries that respect human rights are often more politically stable, reducing risks for international trade partners. And these are three reasons from the against cons- considering the human rights, like the surveillance issue, like the interfering in another country's domestic affairs may be seen as the violation, like also we have the economic priorities. So the granting preferential trade rights based on human rights may hinder like the economic opportunities and the trade efficiency. And also we have the diplomatic risks. So such as the policies could damage relations with countries that view human rights standards as a form of external pressure.
Number two, why do governments sometimes intervene in international trade flows? First one is protecting local businesses. Government add taxes on or limits on imports to help local companies. For example, taxing imported steel supports local steel makers. The second one is boosting the economy. Governments give money or tax break to local producers. This helps farmers and business compete better globally. The last one is keeping the country safe. Rules block the export of sensitive tech to stop rivals from using it, protecting national safety.
Through trade diversification policies, companies can demand support from the government to expand exports to emerging markets in addition to specific countries or regions on which they depend. In particular, it can strengthen trade policies for emerging markets such as South Asia and Africa, or organize trade delegations to explore new opportunities. Policies to increase e-commerce competitiveness in the global market may be requested, such as preparing laws related to digital trade and e-commerce or strengthening digital customs clearance systems. In particular, there is a need for policies to support SMEs and startups to access the global market more easily aligned. It is necessary to minimize uncertainty in the international supply chain and ensure that domestic companies utilize the global supply chain smoothly. In particular, industries that are highly dependent on foreign resources, such as coal raw materials, semiconductors, and electronic components, can request government interventions to diversify and stabilize supply chain.
Trade has shaped our world, evolving from early bilateral agreement under mercantilism to today's interconnected global economy. Modern trade faces significant challenges: protectionism, WTO reform, digital trade regulation, and climate politics like carbon traffics, supply chain disruptions, and calls for fair rules for developing nations and complexity, while trade increasingly becomes a tool in geopolitical tensions. Today, global trade balance opportunity with concerns over security, sustainability, and fairness. Tackling these challenges requires cooperations and innovations to create a system that benefits all.
So my name is Naila Fiorenza, and here I will discuss about question 5 that discussed the article titled Huawei Export Ban Hits US Firm. So in May 2019, Huawei added to the US entity list. So what is entity list? The entity list is a threat backlist consisting of foreign persons, entities, or governments that US citizens and firms are restricted from doing business with. So the US justifies the ban as necessary to address national security concerns over Huawei potential use as a surveillance tool by the China government. However, Huawei denies these allegations, calling the ban politically motivated. So, in the international trade, there are two types of arguments for government interventions, which is political and economic. For the political arguments for intervention are concerned with protecting the interests of certain groups, often at the expense of other groups. So, what are the possible long-term implications of this policy? Who might benefit, who might lose? So the benefit one is MediaTek that sells substitute product as a Qualcomm competitor. It gained market share in China, and also China tech sector that got benefited because increased research and development investment in semiconductor productions. And last but not least, Huawei company itself that forced to innovate with its chip and reduce reliance on US suppliers. Who might be lose is the US firms, Qualcomm's, since Qualcomm's market share in China fell sharply due to lost business with Huawei. And also global supply chains, because fragmentation increases costs and slows innovations. So, recommended policy stance for the US is coordinate globally, since work with allies needed to address security concern while maintaining market access, and also conditional licensings that allow controlled sales of non-sensitive technology to minimize harms to US firms, and also foster US innovations, invest in domestic tech to maintain a global competitiveness. And last but not least is balance engagement. Um, it can be used the ban as leverage in broader negotiation with China.
During President Donald Trump's presidency, his administration is known for his focus in trade restrictions. However, in the early 2020, he surprised many people by announcing his plan to pursue a free trade agreement with Kenya. This signals a shift toward fostering a closer economic ties with this East African nation of Kenya. If this negotiation is finalized, it would become United States' 15th bilateral free trade agreement, which can strengthen the economic ties between these two countries, which can then open doors to a more stronger trade partnership and many more deep economic collaborations with Kenya.
Next, the summary point for paragraph 2. The first one is Robert Lighthizer warns that Africa's growing importance could lead to increased Chinese dominance without active US engagement. He cites China's Belt and Road Initiative, including a major railway in Kenya, which has resulted in significant debt and resentment among African nations. Lighthizer urged the US to counter this trend and address the risk of a heavy indebtedness and negative view of China. The second point is China's infrastructure projects in Africa face backlash due to the economic burdens, allegations of neo-colonialism, and instances of racism from Chinese managers, which have fostered distrust and resentment among the local communities. This issue complicates China's effort to build a positive image on the continent.
The fifth point, Robert Lighthizer views the growing resentment against China in Kenya as a chance for the United States to initiate discussions and strengthen ties particularly given Kenya's status as a key economic growth story in sub-Saharan Africa, with impressive GDP growth rates of 4.9% in 2018 and increasing to 5.6% in 2019. The next point: despite its potential, trade between the US and Kenya remains limited at $1 billion annually, which places Kenya outside the top 100 US trading partners, suggesting that any trade agreement may not be significantly impacting the United States economy.
Kenya is also very eager to set a trade deal with the US, as America was also the country's third largest trading partner in 2019, which have imports worth $667 million of goods such as clothing, fruit, nuts, and also coffee. But another factor is because of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, or known as AGOA, which allows duty free access to the US for many African countries, is set to expire in 2025, which leave countries eager for a plan to maintain the market access. So, the US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer has also emphasized the need for a more lasting and permanent trade solution. So, the bilateral deal with Kenya is a part of his strategy and vision.
The Jones Act requires goods ships between U.S. ports to the U.S. American built owner and cruise ships, while its intent is to support U.S. maritime industries. It significantly increased costs for places like Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto, Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. For instance, ships to Puerto Rico cost twice as much as ships to nearby Jamaica, contributing to Puerto Rico's high cost of living. The act also shifts demand to more expensive and less eco-friendly options like rail and trucking. Without the Jones Act, shipping between Long Beach and Memphis would cost 3,500 per $3,500 per container by sea instead of 5,500 by rail. Moreover, maritime shipping products far less carbon dioxide, reduce congestion, and limits infrastructure where compared to trucking and rail. As we evaluate politics like John Act, we must balance economic cost, environmental impact, and the need to support U.S. industrials.
Investing heavily in infrastructure projects in countries like Kenya. Like the first one is the economic interest. So China's investments are like in infrastructure such as the railways, highways, and ports facilitate better market access to and improve country control over like the Africa resources and the markets and the strategic goals. So Africa plays a critical role in China's BRI, but by investing in infrastructure, China strengthens economic ties with Africa, African countries and expands its political and economic influence in developing nations. And the long-term objectives, China aims to establish strong economic partnership through these projects, like the bolstering its geopolitical standing on the global stage. And the BRI seeks to create a vast trade and infrastructure network connecting the continents to foster economic growth and connectivity. The key objectives include the promoting economic globalization, the expanding China's global influence, and the securing energy and resources. And I think American policymakers should be concerned about China's action and intentions. The reason of that is the geopolitical competition. The BRI is increasing China's global influence, especially in developing regions, potentially undermining the United States' traditional dominance, dominance and debt diplomacy. The critics argue that the China's lending practices may lead the reception country into debt traps, so fostering dependency on Beijing and potentially challenging in U.S. interests. And the last reason that is the economic rivalry. So the Chinese funded infrastructure projects enhance the competitiveness of Chinese enterprises and directly changing American business.
Who would benefit from a free trade deal between the United States and Kenya? Who might lose, and to expect the net effect to be positive or negative? Benefits: U.S. companies exporting goods like machinery or agricultural producers to Kenya gain market access, while Kenyan exporters of textiles, coffee, and flour benefit from reduced tariffs. Consumers in both countries enjoy lower prices and more choices. Small Kenyan farmers or manufacturers could struggle to compete with U.S. imports, and some U.S. industries might face competition from cheaper Kenyan goods. Net effect generally positive, I think, and as trade boosts economy ties, but targeted support for affected groups is crucial.
First of all, free trade helps the US secure an economic advantage. The US can expand its companies' market access, lower trade barriers, and increasing exports. This can lead to strengthening political influence. Next, it can strengthen economic relations with alliances and increase political cooperation. For example, the US, Mexico, and Canada agreement further strengthens economic cooperations in North America and contributes to expanding the influence of the United States. Through free trade, values such as democracy and the rule of law can be spread to Kenya. In this way, the US can aim to establish global norms as the guardian of free trade in certain countries or regions through free trade. Through this, Kenya can play an important role in expanding its export market and attracting foreign investment. Kenya aims to establish itself as an economic center in Africa and can play an important role in contributing to the vitalization of trade and economic integration on the African continent. The importance of global diplomacy is also increasing. It can further strengthen its geopolitical importance in the Middle East and Africa by attracting U.S. economic attention. It can also strengthen ties with the United States in a variety of areas, such as security and technological cooperation. It can have economic leadership within the African continent. Africa has traditionally had limited and disproportionate trade. However, Kenya's free trade with the United States will allow it to contribute to boosting regional trade flows and increasing economic connectivity within the continent.
Today, we will talk about this question. For the United States, with China's growing influence in Africa, a strong trade relationship with Kenya can help the U.S. maintain a rule-based international order that benefits all. Kenya, as the economic heart of East Africa, offers American business better access to fast-growing markets, creating new export opportunities. An FTA can also drive necessary reforms in Kenya, improving governance and the business climate for both nations. For the Kenyan government, pushing for these agreements is vital. It would diversify the economy, attract U.S. investments in key sectors like technology and infrastructure, and create jobs. reducing poverty and enhancing stability. Moreover, a successful FTA could position Kenya as a regional trade leader, encouraging neighboring countries to pursue similar agreements. In conclusion, I think an FTA would strengthen the economic ties between the US and Kenya, promoting mutual growth and development. Thank you.